Okay, hello students. Once again, welcome you all. So we are doing the representation of the geographical features. We have already discussed about the topo sheets, its introduction, its features, okay, about contour lines and all. Now today we are going to start with identification of the landforms with the help of the contour lines, okay, which is a very important matter from this chapter. How we are going to identify the landforms through the pattern of the contours, okay. Okay, you see this first topographical features, we call this features as the escarpment. Dear children, when you have a sharp slope, very sharp or the very steep slope on the one side and another side very deep slope, that type of the features we called it a escarpment. Okay, we called it a escarpment. So if you need to find out the type of this type of highland in the topographical map, then you need to look for this type of the contour lines. See the shape of the contour lines, you have to see the pattern. Just remember the keyword here. The patterns of the contours are elongated and it is closely spaced. Okay, remember the word keyword, elongated and closely spaced, that represent your scarp slope and the deep slope. Okay, now next features you see hills and mountains. Okay, hills and mountains, you see hills and mountains are shown by the contour lines that are arranged in the form of concentric circles. Okay, you see both the hills and the mountains are shown by the contour lines that is in the concentric circle. But the key thing you need to remember here, the contour lines that represent hills are little bit widely spaced and height will be comparatively low than your mountains. And for the mountains, the contour lines are same, concentric circle, but here the contour lines are closely spaced and height will be greater than your hills. Okay, so this type of the contour line represent your hills and mountains. Is that clear? Okay, now let's move to the next. Okay, for the plateau, it's very easy. You'll easily identify the plateaus in the topo sheet whenever you get to see this type of the contour lines, which is uniformly spaced and the shape or the structure is like your sometimes square or sometimes rectangular. Okay, so whenever you get to see this type of the contour lines in the topo sheet, that time we recognize it that contour lines representing a plateau. Okay, now see the plateau, you all know that plateau looks like this. It is the structure of the plateau is the little bit highland area and the flat surface. Okay, you all have seen plateau. Okay, now cliffs. Okay, the cliffs is another important features in geography. Now let us understand what is actually cliffs. What are cliffs? Cliffs are very steep, almost vertical, almost vertical rock faces. Okay, they are usually found along the highlands of the sea coast. Okay, so this is actually this type of the features we called it cliffs in geography. Okay, now to identify the cliffs, what type of the contour line you need to see in the topo sheets? See the contour lines, the lines are very close to each other. You can see this shape of the pattern of the contour lines are quite different than your hills and mountains and the escarpment. Here the contour lines are very close to each other and that sometimes merge to form a single line. Okay, see from here it is merging and forming one single line. Okay, that indicate here, if you get to see this type of the contour lines, it indicate a cliff. Okay, and one thing you need to remember here, the closer the contour lines to each other, that represent that steeper is the slope. Okay, that represent it is more steeper or steeper the slope. Closer the contour line, steeper the slope. Okay, you all have seen the picture. Once again see it. This is cliff. Okay, next is ridges. Okay, ridges are long, narrow, continuous area of highland. You see ridges, you will get to see the ridges in Darjeeling Hills. See this is ridges, okay, consisting a series of mountain peak or hills, okay. The side of this ridge, see, the side of this ridge slope away from the narrow tip on the either side, okay. Now counter lines to identify the ridges, okay. You see the counters formed by the ridges are long, narrow, and it is elliptical in shape. Please you check the shape, it is elliptical in shape. If you need to find out the counter lines that represent ridges, then you have to identify the counter lines which are long, narrow, and elliptical in shape, okay. The lines are close together on both the sides. If the lines are close together on both the side, it indicates that steep slope, okay, that indicating a very steep slope, okay. So this is how the ridge looks like, and this is a counter line that represent a ridge on your topomap or the topographical states, okay. Is that clear up to here? Okay, the next we will discuss about the drainage pattern, which is very important, and that's going to be very interesting also, okay. So thank you so much, this much for today.